Your shoulder creeps up while you play. You notice it, and you pull your shoulders back down. But then, a minute later, it's back up again. You've been told to just relax a million times, but that doesn't work. So, what do you do about this? My name is Joseph Arnold. I'm a violinist, Alexander Technique teacher, and the director of the Soulforce Arts Institute. And today, I'm going to be showing you the root cause of shoulder tension for violinists specifically, but the principles apply to all musicians, and what you can do to play more freely and sound better as a result, right? Because that shoulder tension, it's uncomfortable, and it is, just like a painful issue in your shoulder, kind of a physical issue, but it also affects the rest of your playing. It affects your technique, your sound quality, your expression. And so what I'm going to be teaching you is a very effective method for undoing that tension so all this gets better. All right, so now shoulder pain and this tension right up in here, in your traps. This is one of the most common sites for pain and tension with violinists. I mean, it probably is for everybody, but specifically with violinists. And one of the biggest reasons for that is that we're taught to clamp our head and neck around the violin. So I'm going to share more about that in just a second. But basically, this is very common, and for a lot of violinists, you can try different shoulder rests, try different chin rests. I hear this all the time. Oh, I've tried 10 different shoulder rests and chin rests. Why am I still in pain? The reason for that is that you're bringing your same habits of tension to all those different shoulder rests. And so whenever you find a shoulder rest that sort of fits, you're fitting the tension rather than fitting your body in a relaxed state. So I'll share more about that in a little bit, but that's a really useful reframe. So shoulder rests, stretching, massage, strengthening, none of these work in the long run because they don't address the root cause. None of these address the habit of tension, right? So this is not a strength problem. This is not a posture problem. This is not an equipment problem or a flexibility problem. Your setup matters, like I was talking about, like with your chin rest and shoulder rest, but the cause of tension is not the wrong shoulder rest, because you could have whatever kind of shoulder rest and be relaxed, right? The cause is a coordination habit that your nervous system has learned alongside your technique, right? So you've just learned to tense up whenever you do something, and in your mind now, this is like, oh, this is just the way I hold the violin. This is just the way I do this kind of bowing. This is just the way I stand or sit or whatever it is, right? And so, one very important point here is that this is a coordination habit, a behavior problem, not a physical problem, something wrong structurally with your body. All right, another very important idea here is that your body is a web. All your muscles and bones and connective tissue, these are all interconnected in this vastly complex web. And this really contradicts the sort of fundamental paradigm of Western medicine. In Western medicine, we have this word anatomy, which means to cut away. And so anatomy, the Western medicine, is all about the body and parts. You see, like, if you look in an anatomical textbook, you will see a bone all by itself or a muscle all by itself, but that's not how the body actually works in practice and in function. So a lot of times, if you're focusing on just your shoulder, then you're never going to be able to release the shoulder tension, because what's happening in your shoulder is connected to everything else in your body. So you really need to be able to understand that your body is a web. It's a whole body problem. Violin, playing music, every activity is a whole body activity. And so, one of the biggest things for violinists is that we're taught to hold the violin kind of like a diving board, clamping it between the jaw and shoulder, right? And I bet if you do this, you'll notice that everything gets tight. Your arm gets tight, your head gets tight, your shoulders get tight, right? So, and then you wouldn't go around like this in your daily life. right? So why are you doing this with violin? It doesn't make any sense. Ostensibly, it's to make your left hand free to shift, but if everything's getting tense, how free is your left hand, right? It doesn't make any sense. So instead of thinking of your violin as like a diving board stuck on one end, you want to think of it as a web, with these different points of tension, of contact rather. So your chin, or the side of your jaw, your shoulder, your bow on the string, where your fingers touch, your thumb or your fingers, all of these form like a dynamic, movable, interconnected web. And if you think of it that way, then your violin is more like suspended in this web rather than clamped on one end. And when you do that, then everything's going to feel a lot freer. And this is going to feel like very different for a lot of you, because it certainly was for me. I had to like relearn how to play the violin basically, because I was so tense all these years ago. And when it's so tense that I had terrible injuries in both arms, and I had to like undo all of this while I was playing. So we're going to do a little experiment right now. So we're going to notice the connection then between head and neck tension in your arms. Okay, so first put your arms up and wiggle your fingers. You can't see that I'm wiggling my fingers right now, but I am. So wiggle your fingers, notice what that feels like, and then put your arms down, and then kind of clamp over like you had a violin there, and put your arms up and wiggle your fingers. Say, what do you notice? Like, I bet you can see my arms don't go up all the way, right? This is without the clamping, and this is with the clamping, right? And it also feels heavier to me. My arms feel heavier, my neck feels heavier. It's already getting tired back there, right? So how you hold the violin makes a huge, huge difference. And right, and a lot of this just comes down to your sort of model of how you think about it, the diving board versus the web, okay? So some of the implications for playing violin is, I guess this is like one of the practical exercises I'll have you do, is to think about the difference between this dynamic holding versus static clamping, right? So most of the time, you're not going to be clamping here. And so you're going to be holding the violin so freely that it could just about fall, right? And the whole purpose of the shoulder rest is to provide a little bit of friction and to fill the space between your shoulder and the bottom of the violin. It fills that space so you don't have to clamp, don't have to raise your shoulder up, and you can see I'm not even doing anything at all to hold the violin with my chin. Now when I play, there are some times when I'd recommend holding on, like if you're playing high up and you need to shift down and you're not holding, then your violin's going to fall. So you hold on for just a little bit as you shift down, and then you let go. And this is what I mean by dynamic. It can change based on circumstances. So if you're doing like a really intense vibrato, that might cause your violin to slip. So you hold on just a little bit, and then as soon as you're done, you let go. And this is one of the most important sort of practical implications of all of this. So let's try a little exercise together. So we're going to shift up without any holding, and then hold just a little bit, only enough to keep your violin from sliding, and bring your hand back, and then let go. So shift up without holding, hold just a little bit, shift down, let go. So you can do that just to get a sense of just how much tension is needed. It's not very much, and it's not happening 100% of the time. It's only on that downward shift. So if you just do that, if you just implement that, then already you're going to be using like 90% less effort when you're playing. Now the problem is that you might not be aware of all the times that you are you're tensing, and your tension also probably feels so familiar that it's hard to notice it. It's hard to even understand what to change. So I'm going to give you another exercise, or rather exploration, that will help you sort of recalibrate the amount of tension that your body thinks it needs to be able to play violin. And so this one's very simple, very easy to implement. It's called 2% less effort. All right, and that's basically it. So when you play, you're just going to use 2% less effort. And it's amazing how well this works. So you'll notice if you try something and then you just use 2% less effort, it shifts your nervous system. No longer are you like in this sort of hyper-vigilant, forceful, controlling kind of attitude towards your body, towards your instrument. It's more relaxed, more like sitting back in yourself, more receptive, more open, more fun, more enjoyable. And all it takes is just that 2%. And what I like about that number 2% is that it takes the pressure off trying to relax a whole lot. Right? Because if you're trying hard to relax, then that's obviously a contradiction. So just experiment with doing 2% less effort. And I bet even if you just do that, then a lot of this tension will go away by itself. Okay, so there are 2 ideas for you in how to release the shoulder tension. The shoulder tension, firstly is not a strength problem, not a posture problem, right? Not even like a physical problem at its origin. It's a habit, it's a behavior problem. You need to change your habits of how you use your body, right? And that takes awareness. That takes creating habits with awareness, new channels in your brain that are based on ease while you play. Okay, and I gave you 2 exercises for how to do that. One was the clamping and unclamping with shifting, and the basic idea that you hold your violin in a web and you want to use the least amount of pressure here as possible. And then also suggested that you use to try the 2% less effort exploration. And that one's excellent for any kind of thing. Do it while you're writing. Do it while you're twisting off a lid from a jar. Any time that you're sitting for a long period of time and your back starts to hurt, anything like this, you can just bring up that idea, 2% less effort, and you'll feel more relaxed right away. Okay, so if you found some value in this, I'd love to hear from you. Follow my channel and like the video, or better yet, come to soulforcearts.com/tension reset, where you can learn more about where you can join my Musicians Tension Reset Lab. And this is a free weekly class. It's online, where musicians learn how to play longer with less tension and pain. So you can check that out. Again, soulforcearts.com/tension reset, and I'll show you live how to interrupt patterns like this. And we cover other topics as well, like performance anxiety and burnout, and not just for violinists, it's for all musicians. I have lots of vocalists in the group, for instance. So anyway, you can check that out. I'd love to see you there. Okay, see you next time.